Hi friends. This past Sunday was the first Sunday of Lent. Lent is the 40 days before Easter, not counting Sundays, in which we prepare our heart and mind to remember Jesus' death on the cross and to celebrate his resurrection from the dead. We don't count Sundays in the 40 days of Lent because every Sunday is a little Easter, a day to focus on hope and new life. Our theme for this Lent is wilderness, and all of the readings come from the Revised Common Lectionary. A lectionary is a collection of readings from Scripture in a 3-year cycle to be used for worship. Lectionaries have been used in the church since the 4th century. The Revised Common Lectionary was published in 1992, and it's used by many denominations in the United States and around the world, including United Methodists. The gospel reading assigned to last Sunday was the temptation of Jesus in the wilderness. The last time I preached on that text was the first Sunday in Lent of 2020, and I remember it distinctly because it was my niece's baptism at my home church in Mount Sterling. The pastor there graciously invited me to come and participate both in the baptism and in the sermon. She said, "Let's do a dialogue sermon." And I said, "That sounds like a great idea. I love doing dialogue sermons with Pastor Bob and with the other pastors here in Granville." So the pastor from Mount Sterling and I got together for lunch to talk about it. And after about half an hour, she wound up the conversation and said, "Okay, let's just sit up front and talk about the text. And then we'll let people ask questions. Are you okay with that?" And what I said was, "Sure, I'm fine with that." And what I thought was, that's a terrible idea. Whenever Pastor Bob and I do dialogue sermons, we write out what we're going to say. Now, we might deviate from the script, but we always know the basic content. Thinking on my feet is not one of my gifts. So I researched and I anticipated questions, and I took 17 pages of notes with me that Sunday morning. I also told all of my sisters and brothers-in-law that they were not allowed to ask questions. In the end, the gospel was proclaimed even though the sermon wasn't planned. My niece was baptized even though she cried. My family cherished our time together, even though we didn't realize at the time that we wouldn't see each other again in person for several more months. Remember what happened about this time of year in 2020? Sometimes, a lot of the time, things don't go the way we had planned or how we had expected. And sometimes there's no way that we could have planned or expected how things go. And that can be frustrating, disappointing, frightening, embarrassing, maddening. Even so, God's good work cannot be thwarted. It might be delayed or disguised or disrupted, but ultimately it cannot be foiled. Sometimes God works in spite of the disruptions, and sometimes God works through the disruptions. In the book Tuesdays with Maury tells a story about a wave bobbing along in the ocean, having a grand old time. All was well until one day the wave noticed that the waves in front of it were crashing into the shore. What a terrible fate! Another wave came along and asked, "Why do you look so sad?" And the first wave said, "We're all going to crash. All of us waves, we're going to end up as nothing. Isn't that terrible?" And the second wave responded, "You don't understand. You're not a wave. You're part of the ocean." Sometimes we move forward, and sometimes we move backward. Sometimes we roll gently along, and sometimes we crash. Whatever our immediate circumstance, we are more than one moment, and we are more than one person. We are part of God's work, the ocean, if you will. The power of God's work, the movement of God's Spirit, gives meaning and purpose and forward motion to our life, even when it's not what we had planned or expected. Thanks for listening. I'll see you again next week.